Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a housekeeping point, if anybody hasn't signed up as a member of the audience over there, the staff likes you to do that so we know who's here and who was here and that kind of thing. Okay, we got 3 petitions today, and we want to do them all justice, so we'll get started. First, I need a motion for the agenda. Did everybody read that? Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor, say aye, and I will abstain because I wasn't here.
Aye.
Motion carried. The minutes, oh, I'm sorry, I was going ahead of myself. The minutes from July 18th, that's the one I wasn't here.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, but
Well, you should have said no.
that's all right.
The agenda is done, the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a motion to approve that?
I had one little thing on line 72, page 4. It says the Board of Adjustment and staff discussed other structures along Stewart Valley Drive that are located within the township road right-of-way, and I think it's supposed to be setback, isn't it? I don't think there's structures.
There were buildings already in the right
No,
of way.
in the setback. I don't think they're actually in the right-of-way.
Aren't
There's a setback
aren't they
from the
one and
cen-
the same?
No. You're setback from the center line, and you're setback from you can't build right up to the right-of-way line. There's a setback. And so this is, I think that's wrong, it doesn't matter, but,
The setback is determined by the road right of way.
the center of the road.
Correct. And there are buildings that are within the road right of way.
I'm not sure. I think they're within the setback. Usually you don't get any buildings within the right-of-way.
There are some cases where there's buildings in the right of way, but it's very rare and it's not preferable. What road was it? I'm not familiar with it.
It's Stewart Valley Drive.
That'd be a local road. Right of way would be a 33 feet from the center line.
Yeah. And we were talking about setbacks of more than that.
And then your setback's gonna be 65 from the center
Right.
line.
And that's, so it isn't from, I mean, just to be clear, it isn't,
It's gonna be, what your guys' purview is from the setback, so the 65 feet, and you can vary that setback up to the points of the right of way.
yes.
Right.
So you can't go any further than that, you don't have the authority to do that.
Yep. So I'm just saying, yeah, this line is in error. Because it says there are buildings in the right-of-way, which they aren't.
Yeah, I think.
So just to make the point, so it isn't precedent.
Do we want to add that to the minutes?
I move that it be amended to be set, whatever I said.
Seconded.
Yes.
Yeah,
Do I have a second?
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
And with that, unless somebody else has something, I would move that we approve the minutes as
No, we just
written,
did.
revised.
You just did.
Okay.
You did all in one motion.
Oh, okay, all right.
We don't get too technical.
Okay.
sometimes. Okay, if I'm not out of order, it's time to start the petitions. Lou, are you going to give us the first staff report? And because we got 3, do you guys get paid triple, or how does this work?
That'd be nice. Yeah, it's up to you guys, I mean.
Maybe we should get paid triple.
Do we set the wages?
The first petition is kind of a 3-pronged petition. There's 3 variances. One's for a dwelling between the toe and the top of the bluff. And then the second 2 are from feedlots. There's a neighboring feedlot directly to the north and one a little bit further away to the northwest. So we'll get into definitions. As you see, we're using the definition for seasonal dwelling. The petitioners plan to use the dwelling as more of a a recreational cabin, use it for hunting and getting away on the weekends and that sort of thing. So the definition for dwelling seasonal is a freestanding residence designed for or occupied by one family only and used for recreational enjoyment on a temporary basis. In this case, Chapter 10 does not differentiate between seasonal dwellings, different types of dwellings. It's just a dwelling. And so for purposes of the ordinance, we are looking at it as a dwelling in Chapter 10 and applying the feedlot setbacks to the dwelling. There are provisions in Chapter 9 that allow for recreational cabins, which then those setbacks would not apply to the feedlots. But this doesn't quite fit the size, height restrictions of that definition. So we're looking at it as a dwelling, that you'd be permitting a permanent dwelling at this point. So here's the site plan. The blue, you have in your packets as well, in your mapping exhibit. This is straight from the staff report. But the kind of the L-shaped blue mark on the map is the proposed structure. The feedlots are in yellow, and then they have corresponding setback rings around them, so you can kind of see what those setbacks would look like. As you can see, it's within the setback to both of the feedlots. The feedlot just directly to the north is a little bit smaller. It's less than 50 animal units, so it carries a 500-foot setback. The feedlot to the northwest has a capacity of larger than 50 animal units, and so it carries a 1,000-foot setback. The green lines on the site plan represent an access easement of 33 feet, which was put into place to meet our access requirements. The zoning ordinance requires 33 feet of width by ownership or easement. So this would this carries an easement up through the neighbor's property to John Deere Road, which is a public right-of-way, and would satisfy that requirement. Another thing to point out is there is the property is it's a pretty good size piece of land. Let me see, I can get you the acreage. 131 acres, thank you. And so that reaches, you can see the parcel line down into the valley. Most of it is pretty hilly, bluff side, forested land. There is an existing field road here that kind of comes down and accesses the property and then winds down the bluff into the valley below. I was out there. I do not have a video for you today. My camera ran out of batteries as I was filming, so I did not capture that. But when I was out there, I saw that this access, it kind of looks like it's gravelled. Right now, it's essentially up on the flat part. It's grass, and it kind of goes down through it. It's mowed, and there's pretty tall, natural vegetation around it. And I'm guessing, I haven't been out on the field road here for a while, but I'm guessing that's still crushed rock going down there.
Yeah, well, a lot of grass too.
And some grass growing up on it as well. So that's kind of the lay of the land. They are taking advantage of, even though it is within the bluff. The next slide here will show a little bit finer grained of the picture of the site. But it's taking advantage of a bench here that had been cut in quite a few years ago, prior to our bluff ordinance anyways. And that's been used as like a use site for a camper. There's, right now I saw that there was a hoop house for storage out there, and that sort of thing. So this would be kind of proposing to upgrade kind of the existing use that's been there with a more permanent structure. This is roughly where the bluff kind of carries across this section of the parcel. There would be a 100-foot setback for a structural setback on top of that, further back. So as you can see, it's right on the edge of the bluff. It's not going to meet the setbacks, anywhere on the property, really. It does dip down a little bit over here, the bluff, and then it comes right back up again. And setbacks would still be just to the north of their property, so. That kind of gives you a lay of the land. That's all I have for slides. The township reviewed this at their, I guess it would be their July meeting now, and they're in support of the petition. I think what we'd be looking for is any questions that you might have, but you might want to open the public hearing and get public comments, and then if you have any questions, you can let me know. We'd be looking for a motion to address all three of those variances. So.
One question for you, Lou. Define seasonal.
That definition that we have is as good as it gets. It just says temporary recreational enjoyment on a temporary basis. It's pretty vague. Like I said, the only place where seasonal dwelling shows up in the ordinance is in the definitions. We included it here because that best describes what they're proposing to use it for. However, unless there are some pretty specific conditions placed on it, what we'd be looking at is just as looking at it as the dwelling. I think enforcement-wise, it'd be pretty tough to try to regulate how it's used and how often they're in it without distinguishing the actual structure from a regular dwelling. If it looks the same, it's, we'd be looking at it as a dwelling. Our recreational cabin definition has some more specific requirements. It says no more than 3 months at a time, but the size of it is such that it's 900 square feet, but it's also a maximum of 15 feet in height, and would be pretty tough to be used in a way that's more permanent type dwelling.
I could just speak to that a little bit more, and I'm Linda Seidel, and my husband.
Don't mean to be rude, but we got a process we got to follow. You'll be invited to speak next, so just hang on. Is there anybody else got a question for Lou?
On this bluff area, I'm just trying to, is the comp plan to address how this building is going to look, or is that a different?
The Mississippi River Bluffs overlay district does have some design standards as far as materials used, color even. It gets into more aesthetics and view sheds and things like that. But that's in the Mississippi Bluffs overlay, which is a mile from, was it Highway 61 or the Mississippi River? So this is, either way, this is outside of that area.
All right.
So this is just general bluffs and doesn't carry those same requirements or considerations. So it's the standard criteria that we'd be using. That would be as any other variance.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Lou. Now we would entertain a motion to open the meeting to public hearing aspect, so we could ask others to speak. Is there?
So move.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The meeting is now open to, let's start with the petitioner, please. Would you come to the mic and identify yourself and where you live? That's part of our process here.
Thank you. I'm Linda Seidel, and I want to first apologize. My husband got called to a job site. He works for Pella Windows in La Crosse, so he couldn't be here today. So it's on me. We do live in La Crosse, so when we come to the land, we commute from La Crosse, which is, I think, why he wanted to put this up. to keep some of the structure, the Polaris, the Ranger there in the garage area. And then during the hunting season having a place to stay. A couple things that you're not aware of is when we purchased the land, we also purchased it with a condition for a first right of refusal. Ultimately, in the next 3 or 4 years, if the Fricksons sell their farm, we would like first right to that farm. We believe in being good stewards to the land, and we would sell our homestead in La Crosse. So just wanted to give you that background. There was never an intent to make this a permanent 12-month-a-year living structure because we wrote in that first right of refusal. Otherwise, I think Lou did a great job of describing the area, unless you have some specific questions for me.
Does anybody have questions for the petitioner?
So I just assume it's the Fricksons that own this,
Correct?
this building site?
Yes. And was a letter put in the packet from Mrs. Frickson in support? I don't know if they got that in their packet.
I don't remember seeing that.
I have the original.
We'll take your word for it.
Okay, I have the original, if y'all wanted a copy of it.
So,
I'm thinking we maybe do want
Yeah,
a
it's in
copy
here.
of that.
It's in here. It's on page 24.
okay,
Okay.
It's pretty short.
okay, maybe that's why I don't remember.
Well, to expedite the process, anybody else got any questions?
So in other words, this couldn't be sold off as a housing site for someone else in the future?
Yeah.
So we should
Anything
treat it-
possible, yeah.
Well, yeah, so I mean, we should treat it that way. Okay.
No other questions? Thank you. We may call on you again if
All
we
right,
have more.
thank you.
Okay, is there any other people that would wish to speak for or against this petition? And according to the rules, I have to ask 3 times. Is there anybody here that would like to speak for or against this particular, we'll call it a triple petition, the feedlots and the dwelling? Last time, is there anybody that would like to speak for or against this petition? Hearing none, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. We will discuss.
Okay.
What's your pleasure?
I suppose go through the findings,
You want to do that right away? There we go.
if others want to.
We have 8 criteria that we're supposed to follow, and we go through each one and agree or disagree, and it's kind of our guideline for these things. Number 1, the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. I won't read the staff analysis, I think, unless somebody wants me to. Does anybody have any thoughts on number 1? I think it's pretty much in harmony. It's been used that way for a long time, and that's kind of what they want to do. It's about the same thing. Number 2, the variance request is consistent with the comp plan. Well, that would be more of a staff question, but the comp plan, as I know it, is, makes allowances for things like this. Is there any thoughts, discussion on that?
I guess it's, the site has already been prepared, so it exists.
Okay, number 3, has the applicant established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control and purposes to use the property in a reasonable manner? Well, you can't really put it anyplace else, I guess, so that'd be your practical difficulty. Agreed?
Well, I suppose actually it could be, with the permission of the Fricksons, it could be, since they don't own the land, it could be anywhere on that 133 acres.
Well, maybe not according to the bluff land, though, Bob.
Actually, you could get a setback then.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the variance, could be for anywhere on the property, I suppose, but, if you look at it and analyze the property as it is, I mean, that's probably about as good of a spot as you're gonna find on the property for that, you know, as far as impact goes. I think that's what we were getting at, is that, you know, you could put it somewhere else, but you're gonna have to prepare more of a site, you're gonna have to do more, earth moving, and you're gonna have to travel further to get there. And this minimizes that impact as best as they can.
Yeah. It would be nice to have the video because it's hard without visiting the site, because a lot of times once you see the site, then it's really clear, you know, whereas I'm trying to visualize yet, but.
Talk to your county board member and tell Lou to get him a new camera,
Yeah, geez, huh?
or new batteries, or backup, or
The
something.
charger. Yeah,
User error. Sorry about that.
yeah. No, I can see, yeah. I just wanted to, that there are things, but okay.
Any other questions on number 3? Number 4, the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property, not created by owners of the property since the enactment of this ordinance. Well, the staff answers it this way: the ordinance was created in 2011, and the parcel configuration, road and site prep, and steep slopes and bluffs were already in existence, which are the special circumstances.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, number 5, the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values, might even increase them, or the public health. And that's a question I may have. Safety or welfare in the vicinity. Lou, for you, does this require a septic?
Yes, it would. Any kind of, if there's wastewater being generated, it would require a septic system and a septic permit.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so essentially it's a house, I mean, a dwelling, for all intents and purposes, yeah.
yep, that's how we're looking.
Yeah, I
at
mean,
it.
right, so we assume it'll require all, right, yeah. Is can you see it from the valley, the house? Or the tree, I mean, is it,
You can't see it from below. You can
Obviously,
see
you
it
can
a
see it
little
from
bit
somewhere.
from County Road 11 as you're coming from the south. You could look off kind of the lay of the land here from the John Deere Road is kind of on top of the hill. It slopes off this way to the north, and it slopes off this way down to the south. And there's a draw that kind of comes through here and then dips down into the bottom of the valley. So you can look like across here, and you can kind of see the top of the existing hoop house that's there, and you'll be able to
Okay.
see
Yep.
the house that they'll be building. But as you're driving, I mean, you've got to know that you got to look right over there at that moment, and it's gone.
right, okay.
You know, it's
yeah.
not prominent on the landscape.
Right, that's what I was, yeah. That sounds good.
Okay, we're okay with number 4. Number 5, the
Yeah,
variance.
right, yeah.
The variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair public health.
I think we did that, yep, yep,
Sorry about that.
that's okay, yeah.
Number 6, economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. And the term practical difficulties, before we'd had these 8 criteria when I was on the board, that was a big thing to prove that there was a practical difficulty, that you couldn't do this any other way. And so you'll hear that from time to time, and we hear it now. And that it means the same thing, that there's things that the petitioners didn't do. The landscape, the way the river valley or the valley was made, and that's what we're talking about here. The staff analysis says the economic considerations have not been mentioned by the petitioners and are not the primary focus of the practical difficulties in this case. Economics can be part of the practical difficulty, but it cannot be the whole thing. If this is all about money, we would probably vote no. So just make everybody aware of that.
Usually that's to kind of, if you get into businesses or entities like that, prospecting or speculating
Yeah.
for land values, is what that's meant to discourage.
Anyway, if we're in agreement on that, I'll go to number 7.
Yep, it's fine with me.
The variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and the minimum variance, which would alleviate the practical difficulty, which we talked about with Lou about this is the best location. So I can read the staff analysis, but I think we covered that, didn't we?
Yep.
Yes, yep.
And number 8, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district. Like Lou talked about, if he wanted to open up a business there, this would not be good enough to get you a permit for that. Permit a lower degree of flood protection, you're not going to need that, than the regulatory flood protection elevation or permit standards than those required by state law. And because of the slope and all the other things, the staff does not see a problem with that, and neither do I. Does anybody else?
Nope.
Okay. I'll read through these recommendations by Lou and staff. If we would pass this, the staff says the owners of the property to which this variance is issued will abide by all representations and commitments made during the permitting process as well as before the Board of Adjustment to the extent they are not inconsistent with the spirit or letter of explicit conditions to the variance. Number 2, the petitioners obtain the required septic permit and comply with all relevant regulations and standards of Winona County and the state of Minnesota. And number 3, the property owner submit an erosion control plan and development plan for the building site in accordance with Chapter 11.6 and 9-15-4 of the Winona County zoning ordinance for review and approval prior to the issuance of the development certificate authorizing construction. You're aware of this, ma'am? And number 4, the owners of the property shall allow Winona County staff to inspect the property annually or as otherwise necessary to evaluate compliance with the variance issued. Are we ready to vote on this issue?
Well, I just wanted to make one comment, is that the town board approves it, and with all the letters sent out, you don't have any, there's no additions, no one wrote a letter back objecting?
No objections,
Okay,
no,
no
no
objections.
negative comments.
And the feedlots have no problem
Yep, haven't heard anything other than from the Fricksons, which was
Right.
a positive
in support, yeah.
letter of support.
And, yeah, and no one was here to object, so for my part, I find it okay.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Moved by Bob, second?
Second. Oh,
Just to clarify, is that a motion to adopt the findings and approve with the proposed conditions?
There you go.
C, yes. Oh. Well, I guess the chair has to state it, yeah.
All of that is in your motion, right?
Okay, yes. And
Is
you
there a second?
restated it.
second.
And because we operate here where the chair only votes in case of a tie, I won't be voting until, actually, there's 3 of you, so I won't be voting, but all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Enjoy your seasonal dwelling.
Seasonal dwelling.
Just a point of order, is that true that the chair, is that's
The
not,
chair has the option of voting to pick and choose whether they want to or not.
but it's not,
In the case of a tie, they are, if there's a tie and they haven't voted, they are required to consent.
otherwise they don't have to.
Yeah, otherwise it's theirs.
They can, okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on, I guess.
Chair, I believe the notice of appeal, he does need.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's right, I
That's
suppose I
right.
gotta read that 3 times today, maybe?
Yeah, better wait,
Read it 3 times.
wait just a little bit.
Lou, that triple pay sounds better all the time. The appeal to district court, and this is another legal thing that we have to read. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting, by the way, I'm the vice chair, so I'm a little rusty at this, so I'll get better. By the 3rd one, I should have it done. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days. only after receipt of notice of the decision to the district court in the county which land is located on the question of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision just rendered at this public hearing must do so to the district court. The planning department is not responsible for filing the appeal. In other words, Lou's not paying for it. So we have to read this every time just so people know that if it was me, I wouldn't start construction for 30 days just in case somebody decided they'd had a problem. Okay, can we go to the second petition? I don't remember your name.
I'm Blake Leah.
Blake?
Yep. So I guess moving on. So Randy Speltz is looking at putting a new storage building on his property, and it'll have a 100-foot setback from Highway 248 instead of the required 130 feet, and it's on South Main. They're just outside of the city of Rolling Stone in Rolling Stone Township. So, and you can kind of see, it's a little far out to be able to see, but actually half of South Main is owned by the city, and then the other half is a township road, and he's on the township road portion, so therefore it's under our jurisdiction. And this is approximately how it'll lay out on the site. So this purple line is actually the setback from South Main, so you can see he wants to build at the 65-foot mark, so right at the required setback distance, and then this black line here is the property line and 100 feet from Highway 248, and he's required to be 130, so the setback line actually comes kind of back through here, so he's looking to move 30 feet closer to that approximately. And he does maintain a lot of this, but it is actually all right away for the State Highway Department. And yeah, it's been described as going to be used for storage of different equipment. And they're able to meet the one setback, but not the other, kind of due to how it's oriented. If you kind of look, it kind of comes in like a pie wedge shape over here, so it gets difficult to fit any structure on that site with the extra 130-foot setback over here. And I just got a quick video that'll kind of show you. He's got his orange stakes there, which will be the kind of the corners of the building that you can kind of make out on this. And we're looking at 248 there, looking north, and then now east towards his current residence. And then there's South Main, and kind of just spin all the way around here. Back looking at 248, and I'm standing at about the one corner of the structure. You can kind of see the stake right there on the bottom of the video. And this is just I backed up a little bit for a photo of the site, so it's just going to lay on top of this flat terrace, and he's trying to avoid some of the trees he has there to protect them. And there's a nice deep ditch between Highway 248 and the road, and he's meeting the setback from South Main. So I guess if there's any other questions.
Anybody?
One question is, so the county can authorize infringement on the state right away?
Yeah, so up to the right of way.
Okay,
So we cannot, once again, we can't go into the right of way. It's actually the same for township roads, so it's kind of the same
yeah.
type of thing. But yeah, we're allowed to go up to that 100-foot mark.
Yeah, just curious, is that the setbacks, are those set from, I mean, the state obviously right away line, but do the counties set their and townships set their setbacks?
Yeah, so the setbacks, they based them all based on how the Department of Transportation classified the roads. And so any major collector, which Highway 248 is considered, had a 130-foot setback, but the cushion in between goes up to that right away. And then, so all the local roads have a 65-foot and so forth. And then there's a few other classifications in between that have 100-foot setbacks, but.
Okay,
The county sets those setbacks.
yeah, that's what I see, yeah, that's what it was.
But, yeah.
Any other questions?
Is his house that's obviously already there, is that 130 feet, just barely, like the corner of his house? Or is that
No,
house
so
built
actually, yeah,
on
this
side?
area here, I'm guessing would be just probably slightly under. You can kind of, actually from the scale, it looks like it would be
Just
probably
barely?
just barely meeting it, yep. But it's tough because I did measure it out at the time, but either way, it was an infringement closer than before, so we had to go through the variance process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll ask for a motion to open this petition to a public hearing.
So moved.
Public comment period. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Phil. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Would the petitioner or anybody else want to come forward and speak? State your name and where you live.
Randy Speltz, Rolling Stone, South Main Drive. I'm just looking, that building is gonna be a pavilion is what it's gonna be, is what I'm intending for or whatever. Just kind of a neat little place to put it underneath the trees or whatever and put all my picnic tables and stuff under there. So,
And the size of it, Randy, is what again?
it's 20, what is it?
20 by
20 feet deep and 30 feet long.
Yeah.
So, and then it'll be, I think, 10-foot sidewall, so it'll be about 14 feet tall. Something pretty simple.
Bright orange.
Bright orange. Same color as ours, just a black roof.
Well, I guess it doesn't matter, but will it be on a slab or a pole shed or?
It's just gonna be on poles for now, and then I'll
Okay,
put a slab
yes,
later
okay.
or whatever, yeah.
All right.
Any questions for Randy Spells?
I have no more.
Well, if we need you, we'll call on you, but we got what we need for now. Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against this petition? Is there anybody else willing to speak, or wishing to speak for or wish this petition? Before I get tongue-tied, is there anybody else for the third time that wishes to speak for or against this petition? And we need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Let's go through the 8 criteria again. The variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. I'm just going to ask you guys if you want to have more discussion, otherwise I'm just going to go through each one.
Okay.
Has anybody got questions on that one?
Nope.
Number 2, the variance request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
That's okay with me.
Number 3, has the applicant established there are practical difficulties? I think the map kind of did that with,
Yeah, there's not much.
not much to talk about there.
Yeah, well, there's a septic field and big trees. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, we like trees.
Yeah. Yep.
Number 4, the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property not created by the owners of the property since enactment of this ordinance. Same thing.
That's true, yeah.
Number 5, the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, and welfare in the vicinity. This isn't going to stick out farther, this, somebody turning the corner, there's plenty of room, yeah, I thought so. By the way, I like the size of the structure. We've had some come before this board that were almost like a farm pole shed, and it just seemed to be excessive. This seems to be more urban. Number 6, economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. That was never discussed.
Right.
Number 7, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance and is the minimum variance which would alleviate any practical difficulty.
Yeah, it seems to be the minimum. Yeah.
And number 8, basically it's about a floodplain, but I'll read it. The request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation or permit standards lower than those required by state law. I don't think there's any problem with that one.
Nope.
Anybody else got a question on the whole deal?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, the recommendations by staff. Number 1, the owner of the property to which this variance, if we issue it, will abide by all representations and commitments made during the permitting process as well as before the Board of Adjustment in accordance with all conditions to the variance. The petitioners obtain the required development certificate. What is a development certificate exactly?
That's just the extra step, I guess, of permitting the structure, once again. I mean, we'd be allowed to now permit the encroachment into the right of way, but they still have to, it's essentially our building permit, but it's not called that because we're not a city and don't have that building code
Okay,
inspector here.
thank you.
Is, just one question, is Rolling Stone, I mean, who, is this outside of Rolling Stone?
Yeah, so this is within the township. I mean, so across 248 is actually the city, and then if you go down South Main a little bit, it's within the city, but this is Rolling Stone
Okay, so,
Township.
okay,
I'll read number 2 again. The petitioners obtain the required development certificate and comply with all relevant regulations and standards of Winona County and the state of Minnesota to include meeting the state electric code and obtaining the required permit and inspection if applicable. So those are the 2 conditions that the staff had.
So, just out of education, if nothing else, why is the state electrical code denoted in this particular?
And not the last one.
And the last one would seem like more important, that we have a dwelling inspected for electrical.
Maybe Lou can answer that.
good point.
You could have it, or you could take it or leave it as a condition. It's kind of a standard, it's just putting out there that electrical code exists if you're doing that, and you need to meet state electrical code inspected for that if the license of the electrician doesn't cover it. So
But
we could put that on every permit, as a condition, on every one. The reason it wasn't is just,
Overlooked it.
didn't make it on the last one, It applies either way, so.
because it falls under the standards of Winona County?
Electrical code is state code, it's Department of Labor Industry are the folks that oversee that, and we don't have any regulatory oversight on that. So it's essentially, the conditions there just to acknowledge the fact that that's required.
That it's required regardless.
And the inspector, the electrician, whoever's doing the electrical work, it's their responsibility to make sure that it's inspected properly or not, if it isn't required to be inspected by an electrical inspector.
Is just out of curiosity, if it isn't done or inspected, et cetera, does that null the variance?
No, it doesn't.
I mean, do any of the conditions? If they don't follow or say they don't allow you on the property to inspect it? I mean, because we put all these conditions on there, but if they don't follow that, what's the result?
Well, we'd have to work through,
The variance would still exist.
The variance would still exist until revoked, and that might be
Okay.
part of the rationale for, well, you don't revoke a variance, do you?
Well, that's why I'm wondering if the conditions are there and they're not met, so putting that electrical thing in there does, puts them on notice. I mean, I'm either one way or the other, but I, yep, right.
If people didn't want to follow the rules, they wouldn't come here.
Well, eventually,
I don't know what the rules are that you're supposed to follow.
Yeah, we gotta cover those and chase it.
yeah,
All good questions, I don't know, it's uncharted territory, I've never had to deal with it.
yeah, there's always, yeah,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
for you and the Board of Adjustment members, the conditions are part of what we do take seriously. We don't have a huge staff. Sometimes folks give us a little tip that maybe some conditions are being violated. We try our very best rather to work with people to get them back in compliance with the conditions that they themselves agree to when we make a decision. So sometimes we have to lean on them a little bit, but we are respectful of the fact that you folks have taken the time to create conditions or to approve them, and we act accordingly.
Thank you for that clarification. Are we ready to decide on this petition?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion
the
to
condition.
approved by Phil with the conditions presented, second,
Rachel?
yeah. And all in favor, say aye. Oh,
Clarify, does that motion also include adoption of the findings as presented?
you bet.
Now she's getting technical.
Now.
No, I'm just
you don't
kidding.
get technical, what are you talking?
Well, no,
Put that same line in there for you so that you can have it in front of you.
Okay.
Yep, no, I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is carried. Enjoy your shed. I'll look forward to driving by there, and now I gotta read this appeal to district court. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the district, to the decision just rendered at this public hearing must do so to the district court, the planning department, especially Lou is not responsible for paying for the appeal. Okay, one more. And who gets this one? Lou, are you in line again or not?
I think the plane's gonna handle this one.
Okay. We'll wait. We're moving along pretty good.
Very good.
Not that one. While we're waiting, we should announce to all that want to hear that we have a future bride in the midst.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glad you're paying more taxes.
What was the announcement?
I'm getting married in 2 weeks,
You are?
2 weeks, Labor Day, Saturday.
Congratulations.
later this Saturday. Thank you
Don't you
guys.
notice a glow about her?
What's the actual date?
August 31st.
August 31st. September 2nd is better. That's mine, so, so I'm biased. Oh, great.
All right, so the next petition is a variance request from the prime soils regulations for a new dwelling on County Road 15 for Mike Sherman. So the proposed building site is here on the left. You can kind of see they're gonna split along an existing dry run there to create a 5-acre parcel and then create a new access off of County Road 15 to access that. And most of that lower area there is all prime soils. So that's part of the request. And there will also be a conditional use permit request that'll go before the planning commission tonight for less than 40 acres as well. And just a few more looks, you can see the prime soil stuff here on the right side that Eric had done up, and there is an old survey as well that Eric had found. So basically what he told me is that, you know, the idea to split this property around that existing dry run has kind of been floated. I think he said that this survey was from '87, so it's the idea has been out there for a while, and Mike's just following through to do that now. But the site is approximately 76% prime soil, based on the definition of our ordinance, and anything over 40% that's gonna have a dwelling on it would require this variance. And so the 1984 floodplain maps also have a pretty good chunk of this parcel as floodplain. And this lighter colored one is the 500-year floodplain, and this dark one is the 100-year. But the new maps that we've kind of moved towards using, because the data is quite a bit better, they haven't been officially adopted yet, so for insurance purposes, you'd still be regulated under the 84. But the new maps here are a much better representation of what the 100-year floodplain actually looks like. And you can see here from the orange that that area then has almost entirely moved off what might be potential building site, and there's quite a bit of separation now between what is the floodplain and the building site. And then there's also a chunk here that is high arc probability. So I guess the county might be funding an archaeological study for the site depending on where exactly they choose to place the house. And Eric has a video here, and he did say he wanted them with the volume on, so I'll take a seat. Yep.
We are in section 9 of Homer Township, and this is in regards to both a planning commission and a board of adjustment agenda item, whereas the petitioner, Mike Sherman, seeks to allow a variance to allow a building site on a type 1 soil instead of the required type 4 through 7, and also to allow a new building site on less than 40 acres on a 5-acre proposed building site. We're currently just standing off of the existing driveway located at 23518 County Road 15, and this is the existing driveway to Mr. Sherman's existing building and residence. You can see the new house essentially sets up right in that area. The current zoning district for this property is RH, Rural Heritage, and it's approximately, I think, 85 acres or so. And the reason why that it's in the RH district is mainly because of the position of at least one of the existing structures that's on the slope or the hill in that area. And in that regards, the balance of the property is zoned agricultural resource. Currently looking at that field that the building site would be located within this area here. And it's approximately 5 acres, and you can see currently there is a crop of corn that is basically being grown here. So it does show evidence of being in production and tilled in recent history here. You can see there is a drainage area just off of the driveway in this location here. Go through there. And this would be the southmost part of the parcel. And if a new parcel was to be split off, it would be somewhere brought down to this area and then back over this way. Shoot some more video footage. That's probably a little bit further to the northwest of the parcel, or on the other side. Okay, we're about 250 feet north of where we were just standing on the driveway. And we can see we have a marker roughly in this area that's representative of where a new driveway could be constructed off of County Road 15. Again, this would require a access or driveway permit from the Winona County Highway Department. And again, we are looking at the approximate 5-acre field with this year's corn crop on it. This would be the view looking back to the east, and panning to the north and to the west of the surrounding area. Just as far as existing agricultural enterprises in this valley, coming from Highway 61 and traveling south, I believe there is a horse farm, about 1.5 miles in that direction. And then there is a Homer Township road that goes back to the southwest. And within that property, I believe there is an elk farm, and there's also a beef cattle farm that is more than a 1/4 mile to the west. And there's also the nearest, as far as looking at the type of cropping, there's just some pasture land in that area. And this is, I think, about the only field of corn that I had seen as you're traveling along County Road 15. I believe back in Homer Valley, there's a small remnant part of some corn being grown way back in there. But as far as row cropping, just wanted to point out just how limited or sparse it is. As you're traveling south, and this road takes you up to the ridge top onto Homer Ridge, it changes quite more to agricultural land and dairy operations and animal and row cropping as you get south more into Homer Township. But this should conclude the video footage for both the conditional use permit and variance application.
Any questions of the kid? So you're covering for Eric?
I'm covering for Eric today, yep. But, yeah, otherwise, thank you, and I'll be right over here if you need me.
All right. Should we open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'll do this. A public hearing is open. If anybody wishes to speak for or against, would you please come forward, and let's start with the petitioners if they're here. State your name, please, sir, and where you live.
Mike Sherman. What we did is 18 years ago, we purchased the farm. It was saplings and all kinds of debris. The guy let it go. It was just nothing but waste as far as I was concerned. Cost me a lot of money to get the saplings out of there and turn it into a cornfield. Unfortunately, I'm not a real farmer. I'm just a pretend farmer as such, on a little bit of land there, which I enjoy deer hunting, and most of that corn was set aside pretty much for the deer. So if I had to live on that corn crop that I have on my farm, I'd starve the first month. So ultimately, where our request is to build a smaller residence, being I'm getting a little older. I don't know if you noticed or not, but anyway, that driveway of mine is getting to be a real problem. It's about 1,000 feet down there down to the road, which is getting to be a hassle for me, and cutting the grass is getting to be a hassle. So I guess the county explained that it was fairly reasonable to suggest that I might be able to build a house down by the road with a short driveway and less to take care of. So any other questions for me you have, folks?
You didn't bring any venison sausage, did you?
Pardon me?
You didn't bring any venison sausage along, did you?
It's in the car if you want me to go get it. No, I just, what little enjoyment I have, I pretty much worked in town and run a business, a plumbing, heating business for 51 years. And now I'm retired and I'm tired.
Is there a waterway, is there a dry run through the old driveway, your driveway now? Is
Yeah,
that
there's
ever
a
flooded?
culvert in there, big culvert I put in when I built my
Okay,
house.
And it's generally doesn't go over the road or anything?
No.
Okay, even with them.
So the new structure, if built, would not have to cross that?
No, we'd be short of that. That's the whole premise, is to get a short driveway to the road and less maintenance and so forth.
I don't have any questions, you,
Oh,
Bob?
it's just more curiosity, do you,
I'm sorry, I don't hear very well.
do you rent the land out for the corn?
I
Someone
do.
else plant it, yeah.
I do.
'Cause it
My
really
farmer
looks-
friend up on top,
Yeah.
Kenny Spalding, he
Oh,
comes
okay,
down
yeah.
and puts the crop in, and he's getting a pretty good deal. I don't charge him much.
Yeah, it keep maintains it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, it's a very nice crop, so.
Yeah.
It's a shame right now, but.
Yeah, well, like I say,
Yeah, I hear you.
well, like I say, if I had to depend on that crop for a living, it wouldn't go very far.
Yeah.
Besides, the valley is pretty much getting to be all residential. If you look around me, there must be about 7, 8 homes in the short proximity to my existing house.
Would you put any marketable timber plantings in? Because that's one thing beside, taking agriculture or prime soil. It can be used for planting trees, and I noticed it was mentioned there.
Well, who knows what I would do? I mean, I got to get the permit first, and then after that, my intention would be to possibly put in some corn for the deer again, or whatever.
Yeah, actually, you could still farm part of it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that, the problem with taking prime soil is, timber trees are, like walnuts, oak, anything like that, then that's a viable way to justify, for me, giving the variance.
Yeah,
And not that it'd be a condition, but it's just, it sounds good.
well, that remains to be seen as to what I would do with it, I
Right, yeah.
guess, because there's only, I think, a total between where I'm gonna build and back in the valley, a little bit more, about 8 acres, so it's not a lot.
Yep.
And then what would you do with the existing house if you were able to build a new house? Would you sell that?
Make an orphanage out of it. No, we'd sell that 5-acre piece,
Right.
yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Sherman?
That's all I
Thank you,
have.
sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this petition? Number 2, anybody else wishing to speak for or against this petition? And number 3, anybody else who wishes to speak for or against this petition?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. Shall we go through the criteria?
Yes.
Is there any written documents that we want to discuss before we do that? I didn't see anything.
I don't remember.
There's nothing from any of the neighbors, and there's just a quick thing from the township.
Okay, findings of fact.
Oh, yeah, the township had no comment, okay.
The variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. The location takes advantage of a nearly level building site that has been found to be outside the floodplain. Although the proposal would utilize approximately 4 acres of ag land, the portion outside the building footprint would still be used for woodland or conservation practices.
Yeah, I like that any area that's outside the footprint, and it isn't required, but it could be used for woodland or, even fruit plot or, but for
I think I was on the
conservation
wrong
practices. Sounds like a good
Should be.
compromise.
There's two things that are
Yeah, there's 2 sets, there's a finding of fact, and then,
You're fine.
You can look at either one.
Either one
yeah.
is.
I'll go with this one, I started on it.
Could I just make, just one thing on this, as staff, there's no late, anyone objecting, written objection, and we didn't receive any?
We hadn't heard anything, to my knowledge.
Okay,
Number 2, the variance request is consistent with the comp plan. The comprehensive plan generally supports continued development of residential properties within the Ag Resource Conservation District that will not compromise the viability of the agriculture sector nor existing residential properties, and that preserves natural topography. This valley has limited ag land and under cultivation and this is not a small split. I think that's quite obvious.
what's the definition of a small split?
5 acres?
Yeah, I just wanted to be,
Yep, so anything under 5 acres would be a small split because then it would be subject to the subdivision ordinance
so it is
stuff,
over 5
Yep, so
acres,
anything
okay.
over 5 with 300 feet of road frontage, and this would have
an
both.
idea of that, yeah.
Number 3, the applicant has established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control and proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. The proposal involves the best acreage to allow for a new, smaller home that meets the needs of the landowner. The request is reasonable, given the current dwelling and advantageous natural screening of the property.
Sounds good. And, yeah, and I can see the reasonableness of trying to get a shorter driveway, because anybody has a longer one with all the snow this last year.
Number 4, the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property not created by the owners of the property since enactment of the ordinance. In addition to the soil type limitation, other areas of the property include steep slopes or woodland or water run, you might say. These conditions were not created by the landowner and existed prior to the enactment of the ordinance.
Sounds good to me.
Number 5, the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. The location is in a valley setting with a history of single-family residential development and minimal ag production in the immediate area. The proposal is consistent with the pattern of development in the area. I fully agree.
Just one question. Eric mentioned a beef farm, but it's not really a feedlot or anything, is it? Or is it, but it's far enough away?
So yeah, as long as it's all pastured, it's technically not a
Okay.
feedlot. It would have to be,
Oh, yes.
something that's.
So he was just, right.
vegetation. Yep, yep. So
Okay.
there could be a beef farm back there, but it's still not a feedlot, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, number 5, economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Economic considerations have not been mentioned as a basis for this request. Correct?
Correct.
Correct.
You know what, I said that was 5, but that was 6.
Yeah, we figured you
I gotta
had
hold
6.
these
so, yeah.
glasses up a little higher. Number 7, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance and is the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty. No other reasonable options are available as it would require a lot size in excess of 40 acres or a building site in woodland, which would be detrimental to the farm as a whole and inconsistent with the characteristic of the land. The minimum 5 acres required do not be subject to subdivision regulation and is the maximum needed to accomplish the proposal and is therefore the minimum variance required.
Okay. Makes sense.
Hearing nothing. Number 8, the request is not a use variance. It does not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district. Permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation or permit standards lower than those required by state law. The request is not a use variance. The location is not in a floodplain, so it would not lower the degree of flood protection or permit standards lower than those required by state law.
Okay.
Well, let me read the following conditions if we do decide to approve the petition. The owners of the property to which this variance would be issued will abide by all representations and commitments made during the permitting process, as well as before this board in accordance with all conditions to the variant. The petitioners obtain the required, number 2, the petitioners obtain the required development certificate of and septic permit for the proposed dwelling and comply with all relevant regulations and standards of the state of Minnesota and Winona County. Number 3, the proposed new driveway shall adhere to the standards described in Chapter 9.7 to include receiving a driveway access permit from the Winona County Highway Department. Number 4, the area of the footprint and the disturbance will be staked prior to issuing a development certificate. Number 5, after the corn is off, we hope. Number 5, we're not sure when the deer are going to have that done, are we?
They're working on it right now, I'm sure.
Number 5, erosion control and stormwater management to be addressed in the development certificate application. And number 6, a Phase 1 archaeological survey will be conducted. As I understand, the county pays for that, right, Lou? And maybe you can come out to my place and do a couple. The archaeological, that's a pretty big word for me, actually. Phase one, what is, how many phases are there in an archaeological survey? 3. Holy cow. So you pay for all 3?
You only go to phase,
First,
Oh,
and then, we've never had to do the second.
okay.
it's just if you find something?
First one's to identify if anything's there.
This is location, and the second one is more assessment, and then the third one is full excavation.
Wow.
Usually after the first one, if you find something, the idea is to avoid the site.
What they actually do? Dig holes here and there?
They go out and
Just random?
monitor it, they dig holes, and then they
Yeah, just, okay,
can identify anything.
okay.
I'm not going to say archaeological again, so we'll go with, Winona County zoning ordinance should be determined that the proposed project falls within the delineated area. Number 7, these are all conditions. Last condition, number 7, the owners of the property shall allow Winona County staff to inspect the property annually or especially during deer season. No, just kidding. As otherwise necessary to, well, that could be necessary. As otherwise necessary to evaluate compliance with the variance issued.
Okay.
Now we have our conditions, we have our information. Are we ready to make a finding?
Yeah, I think, I always don't like the idea of taking prime farmland, but I think it fits well in the valley, and I think this is a way to accommodate, make good use of it, and
I like the fact that the Shermans want to pay more taxes, and then I won't have to pay so much.
that helps too. But I
Well, it'd
think
be
it's,
you and then the other person, whoever buys the other house, would
right.
double up there a little bit.
So it seems like,
We could put it toward the camera. Do we have a motion to,
we could make that as a condition.
I would move
I
to
don't think so.
approve the variance with the findings of facts as listed and the
conditions.
conditions as
Presented.
presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'm going to have to take a drive next year and go look at your new house. I'll drive right by because it'll be close to the road.
Be careful, you notice they've gone out the window.
Yeah, I got to read that.
Yeah.
This talks about the gun. No, it
Don't
doesn't.
wear your deer outfit.
You're not going to paint the house orange, are you?
Let's hope not. No one's hunting on that.
Well, we don't put that in the minutes. Appeal to district court. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of the notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision just rendered at this public hearing must do so to the district court. The planning department, including Lou, is not responsible for paying for or filing the appeal. Best wishes. We got anything else, guys?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just on a point of, on the Sidell, we tabled that even though we took it up. Is there anything that just because it's, or do we have to take it off the table, or?
We should have taken that off the table, we tabled that at the last meeting.
Yes.
Yep.
And I didn't see it, not think of it on the agenda.
A motion to retroactively remove it from the table
Thanks.
would be in order.
I so move,
Second.
and we removed the Sidell thing from the, just a technical thing.
Was removed at the last meeting and tabled. Now we're just.
Oh, that's right, you weren't here, yeah.
All right, I call for a vote on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. That petition has been removed.
All right.
Now, what about a motion to adjourn? We got one of them or no?
So moved.
Second?
I want to stay here.
You want a second?
Phil's going to have to second it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.